The research lab looked quiet. Too quiet. Han leaned back in her chair, coffee mug in hand. Strange signals had been coming through their deep space communication array all morning. Most scientists would ignore random transmissions, but Hyun was not most scientists. Jinwoo, she called, come look at this. Jinwoo rolled his chair across the room. Computer screens filled with strange symbols and unexpected data patterns. Something was different about these signals. They didn't look like normal space noise. These are encrypted, Jinwoo said. His fingers started moving across the keyboard, but not like any encryption I've seen before. Hyun took another sip of coffee. Her eyes never left the screen. Something about these signals felt different. They had a pattern. A weird, complex pattern that seemed almost alive. The first breakthrough came quickly. Jinwoo was good. Really good. It's a transmission, he said suddenly, from something outside our solar system. The decryption process was not easy. Normal communication protocols didn't work. These signals were complex. Weird. Almost like they were designed to be difficult to understand. Hours passed. Coffee cups filled the table. Screens flickered with strange symbols and data streams. Got it, Jinwoo whispered. The transmission began to play. It was not what they expected. A voice spoke. Not human. Something else. An alien researcher named Daeho, explaining humanity in the most bizarre way possible. Images played showing human history. Not the history books teach. The real history. Wars and peace. Destruction and creation. Humans surviving impossible situations. Humans solving problems that should have destroyed them. They are studying us, Hyun said. Her voice was calm, but something underneath was excited. The transmission showed humans from a completely different perspective, not as they saw themselves, but as an alien civilization saw them. Jinwoo started taking notes. Fast. His fingers moved across the keyboard like they were dancing. Every word, every image, every single detail was important. They're scared of us, he said suddenly. Hyun looked at him. What? The transmission, Jinwoo explained. It's not just a report. It's a warning. They're terrified of what humans might do. More images played. Humans exploring space. Humans developing incredible technologies. Humans solving global problems. Humans doing the impossible because no one told them it was impossible. The alien researcher's voice was a mix of fear and respect. Humans are not a normal species, Daeho had said. They are a force of nature. Hyun and Jinwoo looked at each other. Something big was happening. We need to respond, Hyun said. Jinwoo nodded. But how do you respond to a message that's basically saying, your species is absolutely terrifying? They started writing. Not an official government response. Not a diplomatic message. Something else. A message that would show the galaxy exactly who humans were. Outside the research lab, the world continued. Humans went about their day, completely unaware that they had just become the most interesting species in the entire galaxy. Somewhere, an alien researcher was probably having a panic attack. And somewhere, a human was probably laughing. The massive research vessel Serene Inquiry hummed with quiet anticipation. Its sleek silver corridors were lined with data processing units that glowed with soft blue light. At the center of the main research bay, Daeho sat perfectly still, his four-fingered hands hovering above the holographic display. Jinwoo, he called, his voice calm but tinged with professional excitement. Bring me the latest data package from Earth. Jinwoo rolled her chair across the smooth floor, her long gray fingers tapping a series of commands into the holographic interface. A massive file materialized between them. The complete historical records of human civilization, compressed into a single data cluster that pulsed with an almost living energy. Neither researcher expected what would happen next. The first historical records loaded slowly, carefully. Daeho adjusted his translation matrices, preparing for what he assumed would be a standard planetary civilization report. Most species they had studied followed predictable patterns: technological development, social structures, gradual expansion. Humans would be no different. He was wrong. So very wrong. The first video log opened. It showed a small human male standing on a rocky surface, surrounded by strange white structures. "That's one small step for man," the human said. "One giant leap for mankind." Deho leaned closer, his research instincts tingling. Then the historical records truly began. Wars erupted across the holographic display. Entire continents changed colors as borders shifted. Massive metal machines rolled across landscapes. Tiny humans fought with incredible determination, using weapons that seemed to defy all logical military strategy. They would charge into impossible situations, survive unbelievable conditions, and then laugh about it. Jiwoo's hands started to shake. "Deho," she whispered, "are you seeing this?" A section about World War II played out. Humans fought against seemingly impossible odds. They developed technologies in months that would take other species decades. When one method of fighting failed, they would immediately invent something completely new. Their capacity for both destruction and innovation was terrifying. But it wasn't just the wars. The peaceful moments were almost more shocking. Humans would create art in the middle of conflict. Musicians played concerts in destroyed cities. Scientists would risk everything to save a single child. They would send help to other countries, even when their own societies were falling apart. Their capacity for both violence and compassion seemed to know no limits. Deho's breathing became shallow. He watched humans climb mountains, explore deep oceans, and eventually reach into space, all within a few hundred years. Species they had studied took thousands of years to achieve a fraction of what humans accomplished in decades. "This is impossible," Jiwoo muttered, her translator picking up a slight tremor in her voice. The records showed humans surviving environmental disasters, creating medical miracles, building massive cities in impossible locations. They seemed to look at challenges not as barriers, but as interesting problems to solve. A section about human innovation played. They went from horse-drawn carriages to spacecraft in less than a century. They created computers that could think, machines that could learn, and vaccines that could stop deadly diseases. Each breakthrough was more impossible than the last. Deho realized he was gripping the edge of his research station. His normally smooth skin had developed a slight tremor. "Jiwoo," he said, his professional tone cracking, "we need to document everything. Absolutely everything." But deep down, a new emotion was growing. It wasn't just professional curiosity anymore. It was something closer to fear. Humans were not just another species in the galaxy. They were something else entirely. And the research had only just begun. The quarantine zone looked nothing like a research facility. It looked more like a bizarre mix of a high-tech prison and a room where reality had gone completely wrong. Deho sat in the center of the room, surrounded by walls covered in human historical documents. Pictures, videos, and data streams danced around him like a chaotic digital tornado. His hands moved faster than they ever had before, connecting dots that no one else could see. "Look," he would say to anyone who would listen. "Do you see how they did that?" The other researchers were not much better. Jiwoo had created an entire wall of color-coded timelines. Each human achievement was marked with a different shade. Her eyes would dart back and forth, looking for patterns that didn't exist, or maybe did exist, but only she could see them. Researcher Sungwoo had stopped sleeping completely. He would sit for hours, watching human space exploration videos. His notes had become a massive web of connections. How humans went from wooden ships to spacecraft in less than 300 years. How they explored every corner of their own planet before looking to the stars. "It's not normal," he would whisper. "No species does this." The medical staff watched through special observation windows. They had never seen anything like this before. These were the top researchers in the Galactic Concordance, the most stable minds in the entire system. And now they were coming apart at the seams. Ji-hoon had developed what the medical team called sudden burst syndrome. He would sit completely still for hours. Then, without warning, he would jump up and start explaining some random human innovation with explosive energy. One moment calm. The next moment, a hurricane of information. They invented the internet. He shouted one day. Do you understand what that means? A global communication system that connects billions of humans instantly. The medical staff made careful notes. Each researcher was showing different symptoms, but they all had one thing in common: an obsessive fascination with human history. Panic attacks became common, but they were not normal panic attacks. These were structured, almost scientific panic attacks. Researchers would suddenly shake, then immediately start taking notes about their own reaction. A video played in the background. Humans surviving a hurricane. Humans building cities and deserts. Humans performing medical miracles. Humans solving problems that should have been impossible. The quarantine zone had become a pressure cooker of human-induced anxiety. Daeho's latest discovery was particularly troubling. He had found a pattern in human problem-solving. When something was impossible, humans didn't stop. They got creative. They would find a way around the problem. They would invent something new. They don't accept limitations, he told Ju. Limitations are just another problem to solve. The Galactic Concordance was getting worried. These researchers were supposed to be studying human history. Now it looked like human history was studying them. Psychological evaluations became a daily routine. But no one knew how to handle this. How do you treat researchers who are being mentally transformed by the history of another species? By the end of the week, the quarantine zone looked less like a research facility and more like a living, breathing organism. Walls moved with information. Researchers moved like they were part of something bigger, something dangerous, something human. Daeho sat alone in the transmission room. Soft blue lights flickered around him. His hands moved carefully over the communication panel. Outside the window, stars watched silently. This was not a normal report. He took a deep breath. His fingers hovered over the transmission controls. Everything he had learned about humans would be compressed into this single message. A warning, a report, a plea for understanding. The recording began. To the leadership of the Galactic Concordance, Daeho's voice was steady, but something underneath trembled. We have completed our initial research on human civilization. What we have discovered is not what we expected. The first images began to play. Scenes of human survival. Moments of impossible achievement. Humans are not a normal species, he continued. They are a force of nature. A civilization that breaks every rule of expected development. The transmission showed humans surviving impossible situations. A small group rescuing people during a massive hurricane. Scientists developing a vaccine in record time. Engineers building massive structures in impossible locations. They do not see limitations as stop signs, Daeho explained. They see limitations as interesting problems to solve. More images played. Humans exploring deep oceans. Humans sending robots to other planets. Humans creating art in the middle of destruction. Humans helping each other in impossible situations. Their technological progress defies all known scientific understanding. The transmission continued. They went from wooden boats to spacecraft in less than 300 years. They survived multiple near-extinction events. They transformed challenges into opportunities. The images became more intense. War and peace. Destruction and creation. Humans performing medical miracles. Humans building incredible technologies. We cannot ignore them, Daeho said. His voice was a mix of fear and respect. We cannot fight them. We can only try to understand them. The transmission showed human innovations. The internet, medical technologies, space exploration, communication systems that connected billions of people instantly. They laugh in the face of impossible, Daeho said. When someone says something cannot be done, humans see it as a challenge, not a limitation. More scenes played. Humans climbing impossible mountains. Humans exploring deep oceans. Humans sending robots to other planets. Humans creating art that changed entire cultures. Our recommendation is simple, Daho continued. We must learn. We must understand. We must be careful. The final images were the most powerful. Humans helping each other. Humans solving global problems. Humans creating technologies that saved millions of lives. Humans are not just a species. Daho's final words rang out. They are a force of nature, a civilization that rewrites the rules of existence. The transmission ended. Silence filled the room. Outside, stars continued to shine. Somewhere, humans continued to exist, unaware of the galactic panic they had just caused. Daho sat back. His job was done. The warning was sent. Now, they would wait. The Galactic Concordance headquarters looked different now. What was once a calm, organized space had become something else entirely. Daho sat in a special room, a room designed for the most sensitive diplomatic discussions, but nothing could have prepared them for this moment. The human delegation arrived, not with massive ships, not with weapons, just 3 people, a scientist, a diplomat, and someone who looked like they had just come from a coffee shop. "Hi," said the scientist. Her name was Hyun. She smiled. "We heard you've been studying us." The alien researchers tried to look professional. They failed. Juwoo couldn't stop organizing her data pads. Seungwoo kept looking at the humans like they might suddenly do something impossible, which, to be fair, was a very real possibility. The new diplomatic protocol was simple. Study humans, but carefully, very carefully. "We know we're complicated," Hyun said. Her colleague Jinwoo nodded. The third person just looked amused. The humans brought gifts. Not fancy technology, not complex weapons, just simple things that represented human creativity. A paperclip that could be transformed into multiple tools. A coffee mug with an impossible design. A small robot that could solve multiple problems. Each item was a tiny representation of human innovation. "We thought you might want to understand us better." The Galactic Concordance Research Center looked different now. What was once a calm, organized space had transformed into something that looked more like a nervous breakdown made visible. Daho stood at the center of a circular room, surrounded by the most stable researchers in the entire concordance. They were supposed to be the best, the calmest, the most rational minds in the galaxy. They didn't look calm anymore. "We need a systematic approach," Daho announced, his voice shaking slightly. He tried to sound professional, but everyone could hear the edge of panic underneath. Juwoo began assigning historical periods to each researcher. Her hands moved quickly across the holographic interface, but her eyes kept darting back to the human history files. Something about those files felt alive. Dangerous. Researcher Minho got the Industrial Revolution. Within hours, he had covered his entire workspace with diagrams showing how humans transformed their entire world in just a few decades. Machines that could think, engines that could move mountains, technologies that appeared almost like magic. "Look at this," Minho muttered, pointing at a diagram of the first steam engine. "They took basic physics and just broke all the rules." Researcher Sunwoo was assigned the space exploration period. His section quickly became a maze of impossible achievements. Humans had gone from barely understanding flight to landing on the moon in less than 70 years. They had sent robots to other planets. They had looked into the deep darkness of space and decided to explore it. "This is not normal," Sunwoo kept repeating, drawing more and more complex diagrams. "This is not how species are supposed to develop." Each researcher began to show signs of growing stress. They would laugh suddenly. They would stare at walls. They would draw strange connections between seemingly unrelated historical events. Researcher Jihoon, who was studying human military history, started collecting every possible example of humans turning ordinary objects into weapons. A paperclip, a shoe, a cup of hot coffee. Nothing was safe in his eyes. "Do you understand?" he would ask anyone who would listen. Anything can be a weapon if a human decides it is. Deho watched his team carefully. Their psychological profiles were changing by the hour. What had started as a simple research project was becoming something else entirely. The human history files continued to play in the background. Scenes of incredible bravery mixed with moments of terrible destruction. Humans saving lives and taking lives with the same extraordinary energy. A video played showing humans rescuing animals during a natural disaster. Then, moments later, another scene showed humans fighting each other in a complex war. The same species, the same incredible capacity for both creation and destruction. "We need more data," Ju said suddenly. Her eyes were wide. "We're missing something." Deho knew she was right, but he was also starting to understand something terrifying. Humans were not a species that could be easily understood. They were a force. A complex, unpredictable force that seemed to laugh in the face of impossible odds. By the end of the first research cycle, every single researcher had developed a nervous habit. Minho tapped his fingers constantly. Sungwoo reorganized his workspace every few minutes. Jihoon had started collecting random objects, convinced they might become important. And Deo, he just watched and worried. The Galactic Concordance had no idea what was coming. Humans were more than a species. They were a complete mystery. The message was perfect, not because it was diplomatic, not because it followed any official communication rules, but because it was human. Hyun wrote the first draft. Jinwoo edited it. Their team reviewed it. What started as a serious response became something else entirely. "Ready?" Jinwoo asked. Hyun pressed the transmission button. The first line read, "Dear Galactic Researchers, we heard you've been talking about us. We'd like to explain a few things." The transmission continued. Part apology, part warning, part weird invitation. "We know we look complicated," the message explained. "We're sorry about that. We don't try to be difficult. It just happens." Images played alongside the text. Humans doing completely impossible things, solving problems that made no sense, turning disaster into opportunity. "We've noticed you're a bit nervous." The transmission continued. "That's fair. We make ourselves nervous too." The alien researchers watching the transmission didn't know what to do. This was not a normal first contact message. This was something else entirely. More images played. Humans surviving impossible situations. Humans building incredible technologies. Humans helping each other in the most unexpected ways. "We don't want to fight," the message said. "We just want to explore. We're curious. Like you are." Deho watched the transmission in the research center. His hands were shaking. This was not what he expected. The human message continued. It was honest, direct, a little bit crazy. "We know we're weird," the transmission explained. "We know we do things differently. We're working on that." Sort of. Scenes of human innovation played. Space exploration, medical breakthroughs, art that changed entire cultures, technologies that transformed the world. "We come in peace," the message said. "But we're also really good at solving problems. So, yeah." The Galactic Concordance research team watched in complete silence. "We'd like to talk," the final part of the transmission read. "If you're interested. No pressure. We understand if you're scared." A small image appeared at the end, a human giving a thumbs up, smiling. Daho couldn't believe what he was seeing. The transmission ended. Complete silence filled the research center. Then someone laughed. It was Juwoo. She started laughing. Then Sungwoo joined her, then Jihoon, then the entire research team. They were laughing because the humans had done it again. They had taken a serious situation and turned it into something unexpected, something human. Outside the research center, stars continued to shine. Somewhere, humans continued to exist, completely unaware of the galactic panic they had just caused. Or maybe, just maybe, completely aware. and loving every moment of it. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Concordance was not built for panic. Its tall, crystal-like walls were designed for calm discussions. Smooth surfaces reflected soft blue lights. Elegant chairs waited for important leaders to sit and make rational decisions. Today, nothing was rational. Chief Advisor Wujin stood at the center of the chamber, his hands shaking slightly as he projected the human historical files. Around him, the most powerful leaders in the galaxy looked worried. Some looked terrified. "We have a problem," Wujin began. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the tremor underneath. The massive holographic display showed human achievements, a timeline that made no sense, impossible jumps in technology, survival against unbelievable odds, humans solving problems that should have destroyed them. They went from wooden boats to spacecraft in less than 300 years, Wujin explained. They survived multiple near-extinction events. They changed their entire planet's technology multiple times. One council member, an elder from the blue sector, raised a hand. "We need to classify these files," she said. Her voice was sharp. "These cannot be shared." Another leader spoke up. "We need to study them more." "We need to avoid them completely," said a third. The room erupted into arguments. Some wanted to learn more about humans. Some wanted to hide all information. Some wanted to create defensive plans. The human historical files continued to play in the background, showing scenes of human innovation, survival, and unexpected creativity. Deho's research team sat in a special section. They looked both exhausted and excited. They had become the galaxy's unexpected experts on human history. Jiwoo had prepared a special report. Her hands moved quickly as she projected her findings. Charts showed human technological progress. Graphs displayed their ability to adapt. Videos played showing humans solving impossible problems. "They are not a normal species," she said. "They are something else." The council watched carefully. Humans had not yet been officially contacted. But these research files were changing everything they knew about potential galactic civilizations. Researcher Jihoon stood up. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His eyes were wild, but his voice was clear. "We have 3 options," he announced. "First, we can try to learn from them. Second, we can avoid them completely. Third, we can prepare for potential conflict." The room went silent. Humans were not just another species in the galaxy. They were a force of nature, a civilization that broke all the normal rules of development. They would look at an impossible challenge and see it as an interesting problem to solve. Chief Advisor Wujin made a decision. "We need a special committee," he said, "a group that will study humans carefully. We cannot ignore them, but we also cannot fully understand them." The holographic display continued to show human history, wars and peace, destruction and creation, technology and art, humans doing the impossible because no one told them it was impossible. Outside the council chamber, the galaxy waited. Humans continued to exist, unaware that they had become the most studied and most feared species in the entire research database. Somewhere, a human probably laughed, completely unaware of the galactic panic they had just caused. The medical wing of the Galactic Concordance Research Center looked more like a comedy of errors than a serious scientific facility. Researchers who were once the most stable minds in the galaxy now moved like nervous ghosts between medical scanners and psychological evaluation rooms. Jiwoo had become obsessed with organization. Her workspace was now a perfect grid of color-coded files, each human historical document, sorted with mathematical precision. She would spend hours adjusting tiny digital files, making sure each pixel was exactly in its right place. The medical staff watched her with growing concern. "Everything must be perfect," she would mutter. "Humans are never simple. Nothing can be out of place." Daeho was developing a different problem. Loud noises now made him jump. Any sudden sound, a dropped data pad, a quick communication ping, a colleague's unexpected laugh, would cause him to flinch dramatically. His research team had started walking on literal and digital tiptoes around him. Researcher Ji-hoon had become the most interesting case. He had started collecting random human objects: a rusty paperclip, an old coffee mug, a worn-out shoe. Each item was carefully preserved in a special containment unit, labeled with extensive notes about potential human innovation. "Do you understand?" he would ask the medical staff. "Humans can turn anything into something amazing." The medical team had never seen anything like it. These were researchers who had studied hundreds of alien species. They had seen complex psychological reactions. But humans were different. Human history was like a virus. It infected everything. The most shocking discoveries were not about human wars or technologies. They were about human adaptability. In one historical record, humans survived a volcanic eruption that destroyed entire civilizations. In another, they rebuilt entire cities after massive earthquakes. They would face impossible challenges and somehow find a way to survive. Not just survive. They would laugh while surviving. A video played in the medical observation room. It showed humans climbing Mount Everest, not because they needed to, not because it was important, but because it was there. Because someone said it was impossible. They do things just to prove they can. Sung-woo muttered, watching the video for the 100th time. Who does that? The medical staff began developing their own nervous reactions. They would catch themselves looking at human historical records during their break times. They would discuss human innovations over lunch. They would wonder about human potential. One medical assistant found herself reading about human medical breakthroughs, how they had developed vaccines in record time, how they had performed impossible surgeries, how they had fought diseases that should have destroyed them. "They're not normal," the assistant whispered to herself. "There's something else." Daho's research was becoming a classified document. The Galactic Concordance was getting nervous. These human historical records were not just information anymore. They were something more dangerous, a potential threat, or a potential opportunity. The medical team started tracking the researchers' psychological changes. Their brain patterns were shifting. Their stress responses were changing. They were developing new neural connections just from studying human history. Humans were infecting them, not physically, but mentally. By the end of the research cycle, the medical wing looked like a mixture between a high-tech research center and a nervous breakdown waiting to happen. And somewhere, in the vast darkness of space, humans continued to exist, unaware that an entire alien research team was slowly losing its collective mind just by studying their history. Humans, turning the impossible into just another Tuesday since forever.